The Marvel Handbook, Episode B2, Basilisk, and Batroc.
The Marvel Universe. The Avengers, Black Panther, Black Widow, Colossus and Cyclops, the Crimson Dynamo, Daredevil, Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four, Galactus, Ghost Rider, Motorcycle Hero, Hellcat, the Duck, the Human Torch, the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner, Invincible Girl, MODOK, Mr. Fantastic, they will see Lord of the Deep, Nightcrawler, Odin, Power Man and Iron Fist, Professor X, the Punisher, Big Jones, Sergeant Fury, the She-Hulk, Silver Surfer, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Storm from the X-Men, the Thing, Ben Grimm, the Mighty Thor, Stadium Man, Wolverine, the Marvel Superheroes.
Hi, I'm Joe Crawford. I am one of the co-hosts of the DC Everything Else podcast, and I am one of the contributors to From Claremont to Claremont, an X-Men podcast. You can find me tweeting random comics that I happen to read that day, and once in a while a good panel at Iowa's Joe on Twitter. And today I'm here with Frank, and we are going to be talking about the character Basilisk. He was created by Len Wein and Gil Kane, and his first appearance was in Marvel Team-Up number 16. I tell you, the reason I wanted to pick this character when Frank gave me some options of different ones I could pick from was he was one of the victims of the Scourge. We'll get into that in a minute. Frank, you said you hadn't read very much with him in it.
You literally took the one thing I had to say. Yeah, a lot of my knowledge of Marvel Universe came from the official handbook of Marvel Universe. And so I remember seeing this image. And when you pick this guy, sometimes I just decide I'm gonna go with whatever the guest has to say about it. And I have a nasty tendency to talk too much. And so it's easier for me to just not know something so I can keep my mouth shut. And so the one thing I had is I'm pretty sure I remember him getting killed by the Scourge of the Underworld, because a lot of people of my generation, there's just something so fascinating about the body count of that guy. It's like those people who like serial killer podcasts and stuff. There was just something so unique about this guy who just ran around killing all these supervillains. And I was like, that's the thing I know about this guy. I've never read a single comic book with him. I can't tell you anything about him. I haven't even read the entry. I just knew that Scourge had killed this dude.
Well, and we'll get to that then. So we'll just start with the basics. He was this balding crook, and that's why you have like a bald, almost snake-looking character. And he's stealing this Alpha Stone from a museum. And as he's doing it, he, of course, gets caught, and a security guard shoots at him. And when he does, the rock explodes. He absorbs the power of the Alpha Stone. And this is like a Kree artifact. So when this happens, he gets these eye beams. Sometimes I'm one of those people who I always hated the power section in the Ohatmu and in Who's Who. I just kind of go, too techie for me. I like the backstory. I like what's going on with the history. And if it gets too technical, I kind of tune out. So I was trying to read this entry on the technical aspects, and I tuned out. So I'm going to tell you what I saw as his powers instead of what, they tell you in Ohatmu. He's got these eye beams, and they can like transmute material, and they also can do like a push with them. The name came from a reptile thing with this reptile. It was one of those mythic creatures, and I guess apparently it had shown up in Harry Potter. I'm not a Harry Potter person. It basically has fatal glance, and so that's why they changed the Basil Elks, became Basilisk. So he has a fight with Captain Marvel and Spider-Man. It's typical Marvel team up. It leads into the next issue where Mr. Fantastic and Spidey team up, and the two of them head to the center of the Earth to find the Omega Stone, which was the partner of the Alpha Stone. Alpha and Omega, yeah. Basilisk decides to follow them. Of course, they run into Mole Man. He teams up with them, and at the end of the adventure, he apparently is swallowed by lava. So like I said, he can do this molecular transmutation, and that's going to be important because of this, he can travel through lava. So even though it looks like he's eaten by lava, apparently this is a power the guy has, is that he can move through the lava because of his eye beams. So the next time he shows up, he is down in this cavern, and the Thing finds him, and he transports to New York, and he creates a giant volcano and down to New York, and he's going to just burn up the entire city. He had taken Thing with him, so he's tough enough to beat the Thing, but the team up of Spidey and him is too much for him. So he once again gets encased in lava. That's kind of the thing with him. He keeps going back into the hot lava. So back to the Scourge in Fantastic Four. Scourge is running around killing all the characters that Marvel no longer wants to have haunting their halls. And Basilisk is one of those, apparently, because he comes up finally out of the walls and he's shot, goes through a window, kaput, he's gone. This is one of those things that always fascinated me, like you were saying, Frank, is I didn't have the original Hot Move. I had the deluxe edition, right? And in the deluxe edition, the first time you see Basilisk is in the Book of the Dead instead of in the main book. So those fascinated me. I kept reading these characters in the Book of the Dead, killed by Scourge, killed by Scourge, killed by Scourge. And so I wanted to know what was going on here. And that's when I picked up those Cap issues where he goes to the bar with no name. And I can't remember how many guys he kills in those, but he just kills a ton of those characters. So it sounds like that was a similar fascination that you had with the character as well, the Scourge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I remember correctly, he was one of the ghosts that's drifting out of the tombstone on the cover, wasn't he? He was even though he's a low profile character, I want to say he was actually on one of the covers too, and looking pretty cool when he did it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I'm going to ask you when we get a little further along is why did they pick him? Because from what I understand of the Scourge, I think there was very specific reasons why those characters were picked. But anyway, after being killed off by the Scourge, he's been twice resurrected, once by Arnim Zola, and it was a Deadpool special, and Deadpool, of course, it's a gag issue, so he puts grenades in his eyes and blows him up. Then later on, he was resurrected by the Hood, along with all the other victims of the Scourge. They basically are brought together to kill the Punisher. The Hood lies to him, says, hey, the Punisher is actually the Scourge. He's the guy who killed all of you at the bar with no name. You need to go get this guy. And so he teams up with Death Adder, which I remember dying because I wanted to say he had attacked MODOK or something right before they killed him off in Captain America. And I had those issues as a kid. I just thought the whole Serpent Society and that run in Cap was pretty cool. So they go to capture Frank, and then they get the Punisher turned over to the Hood. He shows up here and there throughout Marvel. He shows up in Realm of Kings. That's one I'm not super familiar with. I guess he showed up to fight against a band of heroes, and he ends up getting disintegrated. So I don't know if that's in continuity, how that works, if there's some timey-wimey stuff going on with that. But like I say, I didn't read that one. And then there was also kind of a little heroic turn for him for a second in the Herc series. This would have been around Fear itself, where they escape from the raft and team up with some other villains, Manbull and the Griffin, and they help Herc. But the thing that I find curious with him is that he doesn't get a lot of respect. And this guy has got a pretty strong power set. He's got these I-beams that, like I say, can push with a great amount of force. They can transmute matter. It almost seems like he can transport himself, but, he's just moving through solid objects, like with the lava underground. There's various pictures of him flying on rocks. And I'm just why is this guy who's got superhuman strength and some interesting powers, why is he considered what I don't know if we still say that these days, but in the olden 90s we always called him Morts because that's what a wizard called him. Why was this guy a Mort? Why was he one of the ones that they wanted to get rid of? Because Frank, it was my understanding the guys that were killed by the Scourge were the supervillains that the writers at the time thought were lame. Is that what you thought?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. So I know maybe his design's not the greatest, but I'm also one of those people that there's no bad characters, just poorly written ones. So I think the few appearances he had, he held his own with the Thing and he held his own with Spidey. So I don't want to say he's the greatest supervillain you've never heard of, but he's not the worst one by any means. So that's the Basilisk, and I don't know where he is these days. He's out there floating around somewhere.
I think this is a fascinating entry because there's a microcosm in this entry. As mentioned, I cut my teeth on the deluxe edition. So by then, he's way in the back of the volume in the Book of the Dead, and so that's the association. He's one of the guys who's dead. And because comics are such an impermanent medium in terms of their continuity and the like, there's always something fascinating, I think, for comic book fans about people who died, especially if they actually managed to stay dead. My favorite issue of Marvel's was the one focused on Gwen Stacy, a character that I probably wouldn't have had much use for while she was alive, but something about her being dead and knowing that she's dead and seeing what that character had to offer and knowing that she wasn't around anymore to be a part of this world is extremely endearing. And so here we are at the beginning of the first edition of Marvel Handbook, and he's just a guy in the bees. A guy who probably only had a couple or 3 appearances before he got this entry. A guy who is of so little interest to the person who's doing the entry that they spend 3 paragraphs on the powers and two sentences on his story. I completely agree. It's not that I don't want them to put in paragraphs about powers. Some characters, it helps to understand what they can do. And sometimes when they explain powers, it makes the character more interesting because you understand why that particular version of the power is different from other ones. There's a nasty tendency to make everything a point and shoot power, where sometimes you can see, if you're looking at the original stories or looking at explanations of how the powers are supposed to work, you understand this person's got kind of a tweak on it that makes it more interesting. But never should you have more power information than origin history, any of that. You know, you got to tell the story first. If there's no story, who cares? So he's not dead yet. He doesn't have any of that. Well, what happened to him? Why did this happen to him? One of the things that I found fascinating about the Scourge of the Underworld's victims is how many of them, and again, in Ohadmu, a lot of those guys were just headshots in the roll call of all the people that he killed. They actually went through the trouble of doing a roll call of all these victims, many of whom I don't think got actual entries. They're just a head and a name. But some of them had kind of cool names. Some of them had kind of cool heads. And like you, I'm looking at Basilisk. And when you were mentioning the story, I might have actually read one of those issues so long ago that I just can't quite remember. But I want to say I actually did. Once you started giving me the origin, I do think I read one of those issues. But I think he looks cool. It's an interesting color combination, that sort of off yellow, that soft yellow and the green. They contrast well. You know he's a villain because that color set. His face, he's got like an ominous looking face. I like the snake collar. I don't know why he has 16 individual abs that go up to his sternum, but but it looks kind of neat. It actually kind of looks like a proto Bart Sears a little bit. The art's by Sandy Plunkett, who's a guy I always really enjoyed, someone who could never produce on a timely basis, which makes him perfect for Ohadmu because you can do this really cool entry art in a much shorter amount of time and really sell a character through that artwork. I think he looks great. I think he'd be an awesome action figure. He's got great powers. He's got a cool name. This is a guy who you absolutely don't want to kill off. My understanding...
Yeah, I think he could have been used a lot better than he was. And the couple of times they did use him, he was used well. He'd been in disuse for so long, they literally just brought him back to shoot him.
Yeah, and my understanding is Mark Grunwald, he felt like there were just too many, morts, as you say, these guys that are villains that just kind of don't contribute anything. They don't have a real strong story. I think probably a big part of it was he was just a guy who was around to collect the energy when that stone shattered. He didn't have like a cool convoluted origin where he grew up with Reed Richards and had a scar and all that kind of good stuff. So I think it's a situation where maybe either Mark didn't like the story or maybe Mark Grunwald might have written one of those stories. Mark Grunwald is like one of the most accomplished fanboys in the history of comics. He's a guy who so much of his work, even if you love it, you have to acknowledge that it's fanfic. He's a fan, and so much of what he wrote was about him doing the stuff he wanted to do as a fan. And so I think that he wanted to get people's attention on Captain America, a book that had fallen off of people's radar. He obviously loved Captain America and wanted people to pay attention to him. So it was a spectacle of killing off all these characters. It was a cleaning house of a bunch of guys who didn't really have a lot going for them. And my understanding is that after he did that, he got so much mail, not just mail, but also so many people talking to him, fellow creators and editors and stuff, asking him, why did you kill this character? This guy had so much potential. He recognized through having massacred all those characters that, as you said, there aren't any bad characters for the most part. They're just badly written or badly handled. All they need is a little tender loving care to make them something. And if you look at Mark Gruenwald's work after the Scourge of the Underworld story arc, I think especially if you look at his Quasar work, you can see a guy who really progressed from a fan who just wants to kind of get attention from killing off a bunch of other people's creations to being somebody who actually wants to be a redeemer, a person who goes in there and figures out how to make a character better, how to get a character across the audience, recognizing the challenge of trying to find the way into a character to make you like them as a writer and to make the readership enjoy that character. I think killing a guy like Basilisk was probably a turning point in Mark Gruenwald's career and a change in his mentality. It's one of the things that frustrates frustrates me about some of the fan favorites, I think Jeff Johns, somebody who comes to mind, he's a guy who keeps wanting to rip people's arms off, where what he really needs to do is turn the corner the way Mark Grunwald did and try to figure out how to make a character that doesn't work, somebody lovable. He kind of did try to do that with Vibe, but he outsourced that a bit, where I wish he'd maybe bared down and actually did the thing that he seemed like he was attempting to do there. Stargirl's got a TV show right now because he took a concept that nobody really cared about and made it something that he cared about and made an audience care about it. And I wish that he could get back to that. I wish more creators could do that, where they would figure out, go through a book like Ohatmu, see somebody with a lot of potential like a Basilisk and do something with him. I'm looking at this guy and I think about somebody who doesn't have the best rose gallery, like a Black Panther, for instance.
Right.
This is a guy who looks really cool. He's very impressive. He's got a lot of powers. He's not owned by any particular franchise or anything. You could basically make him a villain for anybody. So take a guy.
Well, yeah, he came from team-up books.
Yeah.
He was in 2 team-ups and a 2-in-1. That's how he started.
So what you do is you don't go and say, okay, well, let me go get Sabretooth. Let me go get Venom. You go, okay, let me go get a Basilisk, and this will be my guy, and I can put whatever I want to in this person and make it count, as opposed to just like getting somebody who's popular that you're not going to be able to do anything substantial with, is going to be off to the next crossover before you know it. Invest in a Basilisk and give a hero that needs a cool character something to work with. The guy's got history. The guy's got a great look. There's nothing wrong with this fella. As you said, they did eventually bring him back, thankfully, and unfortunately, apparently killed him a few more times, which is a shame because I see a lot of potential in this dude. This is a cool action figure, man.
Well, and I think he has the kind of the taint of the Scourge on him still, because 2 of his appearances were gag appearances. You know, the Deadpool blowing up his eyeballs, which is his power, and then I think he was like in 1 page of Superior Foes, which is as great as that comic is. It's a comedy book, so he's like on 1 page, he gets busted, they move on. So yeah, he became a gag because they forget about the fact that this guy went toe to toe with Ben Grimm, and it took 2 of the greatest Marvel heroes to put him down. They just remember, oh, this guy got shot out the side of a building, and that's it.
I really like how he's got those big red eyes against that kind of lightish green skin. I mean, part of it might be just my Martian Manhunter fixation, but it's really unnerving. Given that it would be easy to go like, hey, he kind of looks like Martian Manhunter. He doesn't, though. He doesn't have the brow. He's got the bigger eyes. He's got that evil smile, that Robin superpowers action figure smile. He's an intimidating looking dude the way he's drawn here.
I literally read those first 3 issues he was in. Oh, 4, my bad. Because it was 3 team-ups and 1 2-in-1. Man, thank goodness for the Marvel app, you know what I mean? You can read all that stuff without even trying to track anything down. And I'm like, why is this guy someone that needed to be gotten rid of? If nothing else, it's like they dug him out of the cobwebs just to kill him, because he was buried in the side of the Baxter building, according to the story. So it's like not even somebody who was like Death Adder at least was out and running around, right? He was part of the Serpent Society. He was in major storylines. He was active. This guy was inactive. So he literally had to dig around and say, I need somebody to kill. Who's this guy? Okay, he's gone. That's how it comes across to me. Just, yeah, like there wasn't a lot of thought put into it.
He's in the Book of the Dead. He's already dead. We can kill him a second time and nobody's going to squawk about it.
Yeah.
And you see, you're talking about Death Adder too. That would have been such a cool Cobra Law guy.
Right. I loved all those Serpent Society characters. That was just such a great run of that book. But yeah, I like what you said about Jeff Johns, because it made me think about, it's really easy to kill Blue Beetle. Make other people care about Blue Beetle as much as we did in the 90s. That was what you should have been doing instead of killing him. Yeah,
it's cheap, you know. And
it is cheap.
And I get it too. Again, we both, Scourge the Underworld, he killed all those people. It's so cool. The problem is, though, is once you've wrapped up the Scourge the Underworld storyline, you can bring him back, but he's never going to have that kind of body count again. And you've got all these dead characters you can't do anything with. So where do you go from there? Instead of creating new story avenues, you've closed off dozens of them.
Yep.
Inferno 42 for Batroc. The Leaper. Sacre bleu. He was a decoy. They outsmarted me. Ah, but that charming mademoiselle, she too carried a package. Inferno 42 is as good as mine.
No sooner has the mysterious girl turned the corner than...
A shot. She's in trouble. Look alive, big man.
Captain America, I am honored.
Batroc, the Leaper, master of La Savate.
I salute you, mon capitaine.
Batroc has the cylinder. I must get it back before...
What's in that cylinder?
Sacre bleu, it is gone.
I said talk. What's in the cylinder?
Enough Inferno 42 to blow up this city. Release me. I will help.
Why?
Our lives are in grave jeopardy.
What can you tell me about Batroc?
Batroc the Leaper. Let me see. What do I know about Batroc the Leaper? My most fond Batroc memories that are even then kind of hazy are from the Grunwald, Kieran Dwyer Bloodstone hunt. He was in there with Diamondback mixing it up, Baron Zemo and whatnot. That's probably like the one like straight arc that I read with Batroc in it. Other than that, he would just show up in random stuff. And a hot move, of course, and just get his ass kicked. But that's really it. I wish I had more Batroc information to give you, sir. And then, of course, he was in Winter Soldier.
Well,
weirdly.
don't feel bad because I was supposed to record on Batroc with somebody who'd claimed them, but I did most of the recordings back in 2018. I put the show on hiatus in 2020. We're 5 years later. I'm embarrassed to go to any of the people that had originally claimed stuff that I didn't already record with them and say, oh, do you still want to do this 5 years later, half a decade later? And so until I get enough episodes out there to where I can prove that this show is back and is going to stick around, I don't want to trouble people. So, just to peek behind the curtain, I asked you last night if you could record on Batroc. You said, oh, great, I can do it today. And you have a limited amount of time you can do this in. So I basically, you're just helping me out of a jam, unfortunately.
Yeah, and again, I collected comics with Batroc in it, but he was always just like the rube that got his busted up by Cap. Wasn't there, didn't he fight like Punisher one time or something and whip the Punisher's or something like just to show them like that Cap's on a different level than Punisher? Wasn't it like in the Wizard magazine they talked about that as like a famous moment?
Did they talk about it in Wizard?
Diabolu Frank.
Did it actually make it to Wizard? I know we talked about it in the shop back in the day because I remember pointing that out. That was in 1992. He was in the Punisher arc Euro Hit. It was by Abnett and Lanning with art by Doogie Braithwaite. And one of the big things is not only did Batroc go up against the Punisher, who was not prepared to deal with him, and that was one of the things I used to always talk about was that it shows that, this is a guy who takes on Captain America. If you can take on Captain America for any length of time, you're going to be able to take the Punisher because the Punisher, the highest level he really reaches is Daredevil. And Daredevil is a fully street level guy. Daredevil is not somebody who can take on Captain America for any length of time, which we've seen because you read like the Grunwald Ron Lim stuff. And you remember when Cap beat the holy heck out of Daredevil? I think it was during Streets of Rage while he was all coked up. Yeah. Accidentally coked up.
Daredevil is legitimately, he's actually handicapped. So when you're talking about how the Punisher can get up to a handicapped man's level,
right? He's
not quite the Cap. That goes without saying.
Right. Well, and again, if you go with Frank Miller always wanted to try to make it to where it wasn't that he had any extrasensory perceptions that let him do what he did. He just like used ninja prowess and was relying on his enhanced other senses to be able to do all the stuff that he does. So you're fighting a guy who cannot see. There's a threshold to what Punisher can do. And really, the Punisher can't really handle Daredevil. Pretty much whenever they're head to head, Daredevil whoops on him. So there's no reason why even a Batroc wouldn't be able to take him on. And that's one of my rules is like, if you're somebody who can take on Superman, then you can take on almost anybody else. And the problem is that you mostly just take on Superman. So you don't get to show just how formidable you are because you're fighting the most formidable person who is consistently beating you. So Batroc does quite well against against Captain America, at times at least. And so, he would whoop on the Punisher and has. And it was actually Tarantula that was able to do some damage to Batroc. I think ultimately he stabs him with his poison-tipped footy thingy. And Tarantula is a guy who fights Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is a whole higher level. I mean, this is back in the day when Captain America was still just peak human, in no way superhuman. This is pre-MCU stuff. And so, it would make sense that Tarantula would probably do pretty well against Cap too, but he did well against Batroc because Tarantula don't care. He's perfectly happy poisoning this mercenary guy. And that's actually how he was defeated, if I remember correctly, was that, Tarantula got to him. Punisher couldn't pull it off. I think if maybe to some degree Punisher pitted the two of them against each other or something, but Punisher couldn't do it on his own. So he was not at that level because Batroc is at least somewhere in the range of Captain America level.
I agree. Other than that, man, why don't you tell me about Batroc the Leaper?
Sure. Okay, so he debuted in 1966's Tales of Suspense, number 75 through 76. This was a Lee Kirby job, but Kirby only did the layouts, and I'm sure he designed the character. It looks like one of his designs. Dick Ayers is the one who actually did the finished pencils on the first appearance, but then John Romita draws him in the second appearance. And I tend to picture the Romita Batroc as sort of like my platonic Batroc, right? So the basic story was that there was a cylinder with this, doomsday radiation stuff called Inferno 42, and a bunch of people were trying to get a hold of this thing, and Batroc was hired to get a hold of this cylinder, but in particular, there was a SHIELD agent who was trying to keep it away from everybody. And do you have any idea which SHIELD agent that would be?
Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
A little more obscure.
I don't know.
And Cap-centric.
Happy Hogan?
Sharon Carter, first appearance.
Not Happy Hogan. Sorry, wrong. I was thinking of
Dum Dum Dugan. Yeah, but I knew where you were coming at from. But no, this was actually not only is this Batroc's first appearance, but the story arc is also Sharon Carter's first appearance.
Weird.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that I had ever read the story before. I skimmed it last night because I knew we were about to do this. And I've had the Captain America Essential for years, but I never finished it. It's funny because I've got all the volumes of the Essentials that came out, but the only one that I actually had on my car and was driving around with and reading was the first one. So the first one is the one that's just beat to heck. And then all the other ones are basically pristine because they've only been sitting on a shelf for all these years, right? And so I never made it to Tales of Suspense number 75. I think I always peter out during the World War II stuff that they were doing in that book. I didn't understand how I could know like this. I knew the story. I totally recognized the story, but I had never read it. And I finally remembered, okay, the reason why I know this story is the same year, 1966, Whitman put out the Captain America coloring book, and I had that as a child. So that was one of my gateways to Captain America. It had this painted cover. And one of the things they did, I guess because Captain America was fairly fresh and they wanted to show one of his modern day villains. So they essentially recreated the story in the coloring book. And that's particularly that cylinder. I always see Batroc, it's weird because even though he's supposed to be the master of foot boxing, I think they just say savate, misspelled. The French art of boxing with the feet is what they called it. But all he ever seems to do is leap with both feet projected at Captain America. And that's like his move it's almost like the equivalent of Kirk's double fist punches on Star Trek, where it's like you recognize that because of leverage and stuff, that would be really ineffective. But that's Batroc's thing, is he just keeps leaping both feet at Captain America. And it works pretty well the first time. Cap talks about how this guy's built like a brick house, that this guy, like he almost broke his hands punching this guy because he was so thick and so strong and such. But you don't really get that conveyed in the action because Batroc just keeps throwing his feet at the guy, right? There's no like cool roundhouses or anything like that. Snap kicks, none of that stuff. It's just both feet at him, right? So after that two-parter and after the coloring book, 1967, he comes back for one more issue of Tales of Suspense, number 85, and we find out for sure that he's actually been working for Hydra, which won't be the last time. And he has this weird sense of honor where Hydra tries to backstab Captain America, like shoot him in the back while he's fighting Batroc. And Batroc's like, no, my honor, I must beat him myself. And so they end up teaming up against Hydra because he's just so offended that they wouldn't let him defeat Captain America, even though they probably could tell that wasn't going to happen. And I always thought, again, I thought that the Batroc was more of a Cap villain for a longer period of time, again, because he was in the coloring book. Batroc almost immediately is recognized as somebody who cannot take Captain America on his own. So as early as 1968, Captain America number 105, which of course it started with 100, so that's very early into his solo run. It's Lee Kirby again. He's already teaming up with a Swordsman and Living Laser against Captain America, and they're still getting whooped, right? And then in 1970, Captain America number 130, this is Lee with Gene Colan. He's teaming up with Porcupine and Whirlwind. So it's like his credibility is already blown before the 60s are out, right? I thought that he had a little bit more of a rep than this, right?
Batroc's Brigade, sir. Call them by their names. It's Batroc's Brigade.
Which is another interesting thing. So from what I can tell, Batroc's Brigade shows up first in 1972. This was Captain America with the Falcon. They were a duo by then. 149 through 150. That one was by Jerry Conway and Sal Buscema. And that's the first time we see Batroc's Brigade, but they're actually a brigade. They talked about how a brigade is 10,000 people, and I don't think he had 10,000 people, but he had like a full like army, like a regiment or something, just like a ton of guys. And they were running around kidnapping children and teens that were like from orphanages and off the streets and stuff. So it was almost like this weird, like, what's the character from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh my gosh, if you wouldn't ask me.
Michael Rooker.
Yeah. Hey, you. What was Star-Lord's captain's dude and Yondu? It's Yondu.
Yondu, thank you. So movie Yondu. He's doing movie Yondu kind of stuff for Ego, but it's not for Ego. It's for the Stranger. And I don't remember what the heck, because I'm just skimming this stuff. So I don't know why the Stranger was having him take these kids. But once again, he kidnaps the kid with his brigade. But then when he finds out whatever the Stranger's doing with the kids, he's like, my own heir. And then he teams with Captain America to battle the Stranger. So like, if Batroc would just vet the people he's working for, he'd probably be able to be more successful. But because he doesn't, he just keeps looking more and more ineffectual and inferior, right? So he turns up 2 more years later in 1974. He's in Marvel Premiere featuring Iron Fist number 20. And this is 5-6 issues into Iron Fist's run on the book. And he does have a pretty cool fight with Iron Fist. It's drawn by Arvell Jones. There's a 16-panel grid of them fighting. It reminded me of when Matt Wagner did his similar deal in Batman Grendel. They did fairly well, but what ultimately happens is Batroc tries to do his dumb double foot kick while Iron Fists his feet. And that's the end of the fight right there. And that's when the Batroc's brigade gets unleashed against Iron Fist, and Iron Fist is whooping on them too. And there was some ninja guy that was part of an Iron Fist arc, and he comes in and starts helping Iron Fist. While they were a decent match for a while, Iron Fist is also much more powerful than Batroc, so I didn't get a win there. He didn't show up again for 4 years, 1978. He turns up in the Defenders arc from issue 63 to 64. On the second part, there's just tons of people. I don't remember what the heck's going on, but there's like 30 some odd characters on the hero side, and same with the villain side. It was almost like a proto Contest of Champions or Secret Wars, but at a lower tier. And randomly, he's like fighting White Tiger on an escalator, and then he disappears for a little while, and White Tiger's still running around, so you have to assume that White Tiger probably beat him at least a little bit. So again, this guy's rep's not been getting helped. Then he doesn't turn up again for another few years. He turns up in 1980 for Captain America number 251 through 252. This was during the Stern Burn run, so I thought you might have touched on that, but I guess not.
I don't know, let me Google it.
Because I know you got some of that material, right? Or did you never go back that far?
Went back that far.
Yeah, because you were more of a Zach guy.
I don't think I have this stuff.
Okay, so I never went back that far either. I've got some of the Stern Burn stuff. I've got it in collections now, but I haven't gone and read them. I didn't read them as a child. I have not yet read them as an adult. So he teams up with Mr. Hyde. And it's one of those things where he's sort of like conscripted by Mr. Hyde. Like, I think he was hired, but also when he tries to like back out because Hyde freaks him out, Hyde's basically like, grabbing him by the neck and like a chicken head and not making him do what he wants him to do. But Hyde doesn't feel good about it. Batroc doesn't feel good about it. So when he gets the opportunity after they beat Captain America and hoist him onto the mast of a boat, Batroc helps him get loose, and then they team up and they beat Mr. Hyde. But then Cap's like, yeah, but I can't let you go. So him and the Navy kind of get together and arrest Batroc, and he's like, oh, Zut the Lord, that kind of thing. So it looked like a cute story anyway. One of these days I'll get around reading it. So then he disappears for 5 stinking years, and he's in Captain America number 302 through 303. And this is one that you probably remember because it's Mike Carlin during his brief run writing it, Paul Neary, and that's when you get the brigade that I always thought was the original ones, because that was the first time I saw them, was Machete and Zarin, the weapons master, which I honestly think those guys should have been cooler, particularly Zarin, the weapons master. I've always thought he looks super cool. And I really wish that Batroc's brigade had maybe leveled them up a little bit. So at least as a trio, they could do some damage to Cap.
Yeah, I for sure remember these covers. The one with Batroc leaping with Zarin and Machete chilling in the background. I've definitely seen this. This is 303.
Mm-hmm. But you never had, you probably, but you've not read them?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And then again, another 4 years before we see Batroc again. And this was Captain America 357 through 362, Bloodstone Hunt. Now that's one I've skimmed through, I've tossed through, but by that point I was tired of the Grunwald run, so I never properly read that. And I remember you telling me that was one of your favorite runs of Cap.
Yeah, the story is great. Kieran Dwyer. I love Kieran Dwyer's Captain America run. It is awesome. If you look at, I don't know if you can find a picture of let me see if I can put it in the chat. There is the trade paperback for it. There's an awesome scene where he's like, because it's got kind of an Indiana Jones vibe to it. Where's my snippet tool so I can send this to the chat? Hold on, please. I'll send you the back cover to the trade. Where's the chat at, bro? The chat disappeared. Put it in the chat. Anyway, it's like very cinematic. It's very Indiana Jonesy. It's got its twist at the end. It's got Diamondback, who's super hot during this run. It's got Batroc, Zarin, and Machete in it. It's freaking cool. I highly suggest suggest you read them. Anyway, what else do you want to say about it? It's awesome. Go read Bloodstone Hunt, people. Why aren't you reading Bloodstone Hunt?
Yeah, I like that back issue, that back cover image. That is neat. Pretty disappointing that we didn't get Diamond back in the new Captain America movie either, because she was supposed to be in there. There's even merchandise, but apparently she didn't make it through the reshoots.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she was. There's toys. There's like Happy Meals and stuff with her in it, and she's not in the movie at all, from what I understand.
Oh, well, let's save it for the podcast.
Right. But yeah, so there's a disappointment for you. One of the next things that comes up that I thought was noteworthy, 1993, I used to read Marvel Comics Presents. I had dropped it by like the 1 teens or so I never read this one the first time around, but it was issue 139. It's a Batroc solo story, and it's drawn by Petty. And I don't remember this guy. He did some issues of Supreme when he met Spawn and stuff. He was a McFarlane clone, and it's so weird because he's actually better at Marvel than he was at Image. He more captured that McFarlane vibe without the bizarro anatomical excesses. But yeah, it's Batroc, and he's trying to go to the bank to get some money out of the bank, and he walks by a robbery in progress, and so the bank manager's wife happens to be there, and she gives him $10,000 to go save her husband in the bank and beat the bank robbers. And there's a telekinetic midget guy. There's all kinds of bizarre stuff going on there. He does manage to beat them ultimately, but then for some reason the bank manager tries to claim credit for it, and then Batroc literally grabs a garbage can and dumps garbage on him while he's being interviewed by reporters, and gives the woman her money back, and then leaves because he's just put off by the whole thing. And again, it comes down to his on air, even though he was going to walk right on by until the lady offered him some money. It's so bizarre to see, and don't even get me started on the Pepe Le Pew stuff going on in terms of his speech patterns, but just seeing the McFarlane style applied to Batroc of all people in such a throwaway story, it was just such a peculiar thing to have come across. And then another one
what issue was that? What issue?
139
of what?
Marvel Comics Presents.
Oh, Marvel Comics. Okay, got it. I feel like I might have had that issue. I had a lot of Marvel Comics Presents back in the day.
I didn't realize that. Why?
I don't know. I just, for some reason, I was able to find them wherever I looked for comics. So like all of the Sam Keith Wolverine stuff I had, whoever happened to be sharing the book at the time, but I was only getting it for the Sam Keith Wolverine stuff. And I ended up getting all of it and then collecting past that. Or I think it might have, I don't remember when it, don't quote me on when I stopped. And then I eventually started kind of going back. I had tons of it. So I probably had this issue. I can't find any interiors. Oh well. Anyway, sorry. I wanted to see this weird McFarlane clone of which you speak.
I could probably throw a link at you.
Oh, you know what? I found one page. Yeah, this guy is kind of a McFarlane clone, huh?
Mm-hmm. So after that, there's another one that I know you were collecting. 1998, I believe it was Captain America number 4. This was during the Wade Garney run. They did a slight redesign on Batroc that lasted for a little while. The one where they gave him like the metallic shoulder pieces and stuff. They tightened up the suit and made it more like a Cobra soldier or something. And he just randomly shows up. He's been hired by Hydra again, and he attacks Captain America just because Hydra's paid him to do so. And then Cap and Hawkeye end up going after him, and Cap's trying to wave Hawkeye off, but Hawkeye's actually, no, I'm going to save you, Cap. And for once, Batroc actually manages to beat Hawkeye down, so he's knocked out for a while. And then they have a fight on the ice in Times Square or whatever. And then Cap manages to make him go away.
Interesting.
Now you read that though, right?
I don't know.
Oh, and
man, you know what? That was like that late Grunwald stuff where he was in the armor. Was it that stuff?
Well, now, you might be talking about like Fighting Chance and stuff when Cap was in the armor. Yeah, okay, I got you now.
Is that the stuff you're talking about? You're talking about?
No, I'm talking about later. I'm talking about the second run of Wade and Gardy after Heroes Return.
Gardy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. No, I don't think I. No, I don't.
You were buying the book.
The second run?
Yeah, Heroes Return. I'm pretty sure you bought that. I know you bought the first run.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I did. I obviously was not. I was more into the first run than the second run.
Yeah. It was never the same without Scott Koblish inks, and also they never found their groove again when they came back. I know I wasn't that into. I know some people like that run. I'm not. I dropped the run after a while. I was collecting it when it was coming out. So then in 2000, Batroc turns up in Gambit 16 through 19, a story arc called Assassination Game. One thing they had started doing is like in one appearance, he had a whip cane. That was going to be his new weapon. Okay, in this one, Gambit actually uses his powers on Batroc's mustache, so the mustache explodes. So this is kind of like the low point of Batroc. Over the course of the arc, he gets beaten by some ninja chick who's part of like the Assassin's Guild, where Gambit's part of the Thieves Guild, named Zoe Ishihara. And I don't think she even has any power. She just beats the guy. The one thing that was notable too is that it was drawn by Yannick Paquette, and I'm sure I mispronounced pronounce that. But so I think it's the only time that anybody remotely French drew Batroc, but it's a French Canadian. He's from Montreal. But yeah, just getting beat by Rando in a Muty comic, that's like one of those things that I think would have had you steamed at one point in time, because that would the exact sort of thing you hated the Muties doing to your guys.
Yeah, but still, I mean, Gambit's got powers, right? I mean, it's not.
Well, but Batroc wasn't alone. He had a bunch of other people with him.
It's like the Power Pack beat him, right?
So then in 2001, again, that same volume of Captain America, this time issue 41. This is when Dan Jurgens was doing the book. He was being inked by your boy, Bob Layton, by the way. Batroc is again, this time his gimmick is that he's got the neural shock boots, and he managed to knock Cap out very briefly with the boots. He's trying to get some file disk or something, and Cap's trying to prevent it. And it turns out this time he's working for the Red Skull, and he knows it because he's like, I have to get this dude or he's going to kill me. So again, Batroc's not very good about picking who he's going to work for. So then he turns up again in 2005 in the Black Panther run that was done by Reginald Hudlin and John Romita Jr. I think you were gone by then, right? Yeah. So this is where they did this weird retcon where it was like almost Ultimate Black Panther, but it was supposed to be in continuity. And they threw a bunch of classic Avengers villains at him, like Black Knight and Radioactive Man and stuff. And then Batroc was just in the mix. They didn't even have him in costume. He's running around with like a poofy shirt, like a pirate shirt. And he doesn't really do much. He does fight Black Panther or one of his people. I think he actually fights Okoye, or or someone who probably influenced Okoye. But not he looks all right by Romita Jr., but he was mostly working with the Claw, and I think it was actually the U.S. government that was paying for all these guys to essentially invade Wakanda, so they have a pretense to defend Wakanda, and while they're there, basically occupy, and Black Panther repels them. And it was weird placing continuity anyway, because they were trying to act like this was Black Panther's first appearance, but they were still part of the main continuity, so it was a weird thing. They did a motion comic of it, though, so I think Batroc got animated on that. Matter of fact, I wouldn't be shocked. I had to check. I didn't do media stuff, but he probably turned up in the old Marvel Superheroes cartoon as well at some point.
All right, he did appear, I think, in the Marvel Superheroes Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon, but I don't remember in what respect. I'm sure he was just some goon.
So finally, most recently, apparently he appeared in a bunch of issues of a book called The Unbelievable Gwenpool. So this is one of those Gwen Stacy variants where she's also a Deadpool, and he's like in 18 issues of this stupid thing from back in 2016. But I had no interest in researching that. That's way past my time, and it's certainly past my interest level.
Yeah. I think I've made my opinion of any sort of Gwen and Deadpool variant. Just I completely check out.
Yeah. I can't deal with all the clones. Yeah. It's like they learned nothing from Maximum Clonage back in the 90s. Now every character's got a bajillion different, everything's a verse now, and everybody's got multiversal versions of themselves. I can't deal with it. I'm too old for this crap. So hard pass.
It's just like Creed. It's like Creed becoming popular again. We warned you they sucked last time. You're gonna get bit all over again.
By the way, what do you think of the costume? What do you think of the look?
I think he looks great.
Yeah, I love the purple and orange. Weirdly, for a bit there, they tried to make him 2 shades of purple. It just doesn't work. You need the weird contrast. You need the peanut butter and jelly action. It works.
Yeah, and he's got the cool little winged mask part and everything. Like he just which is why he's got no business looking that good. But really, the same thing kind of goes for Zaran and Machete. They all look pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of losers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's they got no business looking as cool as they do.
Matt and Zaran fought the Master of Kung Fu. So he should have really posted some numbers on Cap, I would think, but apparently not.
Just part of the brigade, man. But I mean, I think that's happened to lots of characters. So sometimes but usually it just feels like if your costume's good, you find a way to kind of be cool, no matter how bad the stories are. But I don't know, maybe people don't agree with us, but I think Batroc's always looked cool.
Yeah, I dig him.
Face front, true believers. The official listeners of the Marvel Handbook podcast are
Alan Achenbach, Billy Hines Comics Enabler, Brento 3000, Captain Entropy, Chris Dumford, DC Dave, the deadened kid who wrote, had a Baron Zemo Secret Wars figure because I dug the Slam and Disco Tog Zek draped him in. Zero connection to the character, but that toy, that highly durable plastic put up with a lot. Derek W.C. who added, "Are the good old days, where I still fantasized about what a Masters of Evil / Real T-Bolts movie would be like. Dirk Ashton, Doc Strange, Dr. A&J, Ed Moore, Gulf of Mexico, The Hammer Strikes, Random Geeky Stuff, History of Comics on Film, Jim Imbruglia, SCTV Forever, Julia Rowell, Keith G. Baker, who added, "Didn't we record a few of these together? I remember recording Airwalker with someone." The Irredeemable Shag, who added, "I think we all recorded some entries years ago with Diabolu Frank for this show. I look forward to hearing how I sounded before puberty." Kenny Crawley Jr., Professor Boomer, Ryan Daly, Cisco and Tim Price.
All characters and concepts appearing in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe and the distinct likenesses thereof are the trademark and copyright of Marvel Entertainment LLC, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company. This has been a non-for-profit fan production from Rolled Spine Podcast. Any copyrighted material presented herein are presumed covered under fair use, with no infringement intended. Till next time, Excelsior!